You've been thinking about buying a home, but you have to sell your current home first. You've probably heard the term subject to sale offer. I'm going to talk about what they are, how they work, the pros and cons from either side, as well as why I don't suggest them as a strategy for my clients. If you stick around to the end of the video, I'm going to explain an alternate strategy that I use to guide my clients through the situation where they have to sell their house before they purchase another home. So subject to sale offers, simply put, are an offer subject to the sale of the buyer's home. So there's a subject condition in an offer made that requires that the buyer enter into an offer on their home, have that sold before they proceed with purchasing. Everything about the offer is exactly the same. There'll be other due diligence, such as subject to financing, subject to building inspection, subject to home inspection, and there's going to be subject dates for those other due diligence clauses, and there'll be a different subject removal date generally for the subject to sale, which is a longer time period. So subject to sale offers generally don't work in a faster moving market. Sellers don't want to tie up a property for any period of time when there's a lot of buyers out there looking. In slower markets, when there's less buyers out there, sellers, after being on the market for a little while, will generally start to consider a subject to sale offer. For the seller's comfort level in a subject to sale offer, they generally want to see a time clause or an escape clause, which is a 24 to 72 hour period, whatever's agreed upon. Whereas if the seller gets another acceptable offer from a buyer who does not have to sell their home, they can serve that time clause notice to the current buyer. And if they don't remove all their subjects in that period, then the next offer will come into place and the first offer will collapse. So another risk there is that when you're buying a home, you want to do your inspections and due diligence before you know that your house is sold. Because if that home has issues that you don't want to deal with, you may not be interested in that home anymore. So you're putting up the money to do the due diligence before you've sold your home, or you've done the due diligence and you're happy with the condition of that home, but you've spent the money and another buyer comes along, bumps your offer out of the way, you're losing out on that money you've invested into the inspections. There are some instances where a seller will accept a subject to sale offer for a shorter period of time without a time clause. So that would be a scenario if the buyer already had an offer on their place which just needed to fulfill conditions, or if there was a really short window in which the buyer thought they could get their house sold and got the seller to agree to a subject to sale offer without a time clause. So on the purchase end of a subject to sale offer, the buyer likes the subject to sale because it gives them a bit of peace of mind as to where they're going and what price they've committed to pay for the house that they want to buy. Now the problem being on the other end of that is they still need to attract an offer on their house that they need to sell, and they don't know what price they're going to get for that just yet. Sellers generally won't come off their price much when they're looking at a subject to sale. It's not considered a strong offer, so therefore as a buyer, you're typically going to pay a bit more than you would on a property than if it wasn't subject to sale. So as mentioned at the beginning, it's generally not a strategy I suggest for my clients if they have to sell a place in order to buy. So the obvious question is, well, how does that work? So what I usually suggest to my clients is if they have a property out there that they have their eyes on that's been sitting on the market for a while, let's get their house ready for sale. Let's get it on the market to try to attract some offers. If in the meantime the property that they like sells and nothing else is on the market, we can take theirs off, or we can continue to try to market their home to get a buyer and hope that something else new comes up in the meantime. If there's no other options for my client out there to purchase, we can take their house off the market, but we have all the marketing materials ready to go that if something else pops up, we can quickly get their house back on the market and try it again. So there's protection that can be put in place on an offer on the selling end before you purchase, that if the property that you want comes off the market or someone else buys it out from under you while you have an accepted offer on yours, we can put a seller's subject in that contract to ensure that you don't have to move forward with the sale of your home until you know for sure that you have somewhere to go. So the scenario of having to sell something before you purchase is very common in this market. Just the best strategy in my mind is getting an offer or selling before you purchase. I'm not saying a subject to sale can't be done. I'm just going over the pros and cons of each. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, drop me a comment below. I'd be happy to help.